Okay. Dr. Yonghun is the Vice President for the Asia Pacific Energy Research Center under the Institute of Energy Economics of Japan. You're based in Tokyo.
Yes.
Okay, right. Yeah. Dr. Jung, just want to get a quick recap of the supply and demand balance of LNG in the Asia Pacific region. Do we have surplus looming, or do you think we could have tightness in the next 5 to 10 years? What is your prognosis?
I think my view is that market will remain very tight for the next 5 years, unless there is a new project coming in pipeline. The reason may be is that currently there is no FID announced yet. And it takes about more than 5 years after the FID, new FID. So
the FID would be for the benefit
of financial investment decisions, and then you will see the delivery of a cargo probably within 5 to 6 years time. So for the time being, we expect there will be no new project coming on stream.
Right. And do you sense buyers in this region getting anxious as a result of this lack of announcement by developers?
I think they already past that point. They was anxious, but now they are looking for alternatives. For example, in power generation, many now are going back to coal, and some are considering nuclear as an option. So they have to find ways to cope with this looming shortage of fuels for power generation.
Do you think Russia's development on Sakhalin Island will provide some surplus in the next 5 to 10 years? Because they are sitting on very large gas reserves in the Russian Far East.
Yes, that's correct. Currently, they have sold out Sakhalin 2, the initial first phase Sakhalin 2 project. They sold out capacity. Probably, if they have a second sort of train for Sakhalin 2, they may have some capacity to supply more gas into the region, Northeast Asia or even Southeast Asia. However, it takes time, and at the current high price, not many countries in developing world can commit themselves to the supply.
Right. Singapore is trying to develop itself into a hub for LNG trading. How realistic are these plans? Do you think that there is scope for short-term LNG trades at all in the region?
I think it may be very difficult because LNG is not a commodity. LNG is still an asset. Most contracts are done between two parties, and it's bilateral, sales and purchase.
Right.
So it's very difficult to make a hub unless it becomes a commodity. And as you see recently, the spot cargo volume has been declining. So unless a spot market expands, say up to 10% or 15%, which was previously projected, but I don't think that is the case at the moment now. So maybe it's a timing issue. For the time being, maybe for next 5 or next several years, it will be very, very difficult to create any hub for LNG trade.
Having said that, Dubai is going ahead to do this spot trading business. They've announced very ambitious plans to turn Dubai into a spot hub. Now, what do you think of that? Surely they must know something that perhaps you and I don't know.
Maybe, but spot cargoes normally are sold to the foundation customers.
End
users who has a long-term contract. They have a first priority, like MLNG, Malaysian LNG. They provide spot cargoes to the long-term buyers. So you cannot really have spot cargo, in literal sense.
In regular trading, like the way oil is. So you could have a spot market, but only if you have two very established long-term players.
Yeah,
So the occasional loose cargoes could be traded.
yeah, traded. You know, most of the players in LNG industry, they know each other, so they have very long-term relationship, and then they can find spot cargoes. So most people, when they need a cargo, they call, you know, number of suppliers to them.
Right. In terms of the volumes of spot cargoes, as you mentioned just now, it's declining. Why are people then chasing this idea that we can develop a spot market, especially in Singapore? I mean, you look at the Singapore planners. They, for some reason, we've evolved into a major oil hub.
You are essentially
Yeah.
asking me a question.
Yes.
Why there is no merchant LNG company who do not commit to a huge volume, and a huge market, and they just take the supply from the supplier and then, you know, make a sales depending on the market. You know, short term, very
Sure.
short term market. I think you cannot have a project with a sound, you know, financial sort of support, because you have to, if you don't have a market, if you don't have a firm buyer, you cannot have a financing for your project. The banks will ask you who will buyer and who is your buyer and how much he is going to pay for the gas. You have to have a documented contract, you know, to get your, you know, project financed.
In other words, you're not too optimistic about this grand plan for an LNG hub, trading hub out of Singapore.
I'm afraid not.
The other thing now would be the outlook. Obviously, if supply is tight, demand is strong, prices have to go up. We've been hearing increasingly high numbers, like out of Qatar, they are asking $7-8 dollar per BTU. Do you think those numbers could be achieved?
I think it depends on oil price and the formula. If oil price is high, it's not unusual to ask for a higher price because it's indexed, tightly indexed now to oil price.
Right.
So you have to look at, you know, LNG price in terms of oil price. So if oil price is high, you are naturally have to pay.
Have to pay.
Yeah.
Which means one more thing. If these numbers go really sky high, how many power plant projects will not come into play, will not be realized if that's the case?
I think
Are we looking at a power crisis throughout Asia?
Yeah, I don't think there will be a power crisis. They will use coal.
But do you think they'll be quick enough to turn to coal, given the short lead time that everybody is facing?
I think in a power generation planning, they normally plan in advance because they know about the lead time and they take lead time into account when they expand their power capacity. So for most countries in the region, they have a plan for, you know, expanding power capacity, power generation capacity. So
Are you very confident of these plans? Do you think these planners have taken into account all the possibilities that could disrupt feedstock supply problems?
I think coal is very abundant in many places, you know, and still cheaper than natural gas. So they will go for coal, you know, definitely. And I don't think it'll take a really long time to build a coal-fired power plant. Just for example, last year China built huge number of coal-fired power plants within a year.
Within a year, yeah. On the other hand, I could also say one more thing. If everybody rushes for the cold door, will there be enough room to accommodate this incredible rush?
I think it depends on how incredible that is, how big that is. But at this moment, yes, I think the coal industry can accommodate.
You think you can accommodate? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jung. That was very insightful.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.